trouble with the organ.
Last hymn book, and page 1's missing. So I hummed. Except for the chorus, I hummed through that. But I noticed that with Mom's failing vision, she didn't need the hymn book, she didn't need the enlarger, and every time I look around, she was singing the words from memory from all the hymns. So I'm here today to talk about the Emily May Holton window. But before I start, I'd like to say a word about our sponsor. Now, Peter, you can look after our heavenly sponsor, but I want to thank one here on earth. My mother would not have the quality of life that she has living with us without a daughter-in-law like Kathy. Kathy, I love you and not thank you enough for what you do to provide a home for the mother and now Martha and Jeremy, and maybe Taylor, I don't know, Jeremy can't be with us today, but you tell Jeremy, I want you to take note, I want Jeremy and Martha to take note when they're choosing a life partner to look at their mother, because we may need a place to live. Now as a medical technologist, when I go to lectures, the speakers now have to declare any conflict of interest if you're speaking about anything that they have a financial interest in, and I'm going to declare a major conflict of interest with my mother and father who've guided me spiritually and financially all my life, and I'll speak with great bias and prejudice in their favor. 1873, Church of the Redeemer. The history books record a pledge of $1 from Richard Holton towards paying off the construction costs. So this marks the recorded beginning of a long history of the Holton family at this church. On January 28, 1881, the church was consecrated by Bishop Farquhar and Reverends Chowan, Coles, and Sweet. And while they were in town, they did some baptisms. Little William Holton was 10. A couple of his cousins, some of the Surrett girls, were baptized on that day, January 28, 1881. The next 134 years, you pulled up the books, a long list of Holton's weddings, births, christenings, deaths have been recorded there. And 1923 is when William and Gertrude and their children John, Emily, Dorothy, and Ruth moved into the village out from the farm in North Cardwell to become regulars at the Church of the Redeemer. Children were baptized here, confirmed here. The three sisters who we have with us were born here, were married here, and William and Gertrude and Aunt Ruth all buried from here. Had many, many years of service. William rang the church bell, pocket watch in hand, 1/2 hour before the service to remind the faithful that you're ready for church. My father was sure that that lengthy ring was especially meant for him to go to bed. Before there was a lawn between the church and the rectory, there was just long grass, and Grandpa would sharpen his scythe and come back and cut the grass. A job that he also did up at the Old English Cemetery. Mom said she remembers him, the scythe over his shoulder, carrying a bucket of water to drink, walking up to the Old English Cemetery to cut the long grass 2 or 3 times in the summer, the resting place of many Holtons and other families, Surretts, Drinkwaters, all part of the Holton clan. Of course, Granny Gertrude spent most of her life ironing church linen and fire surplices, boiling water on the stove, washing by hand, hanging out to dry, heating the iron on the wood stove, and she must have felt she had found heaven on earth when she received an electric washing machine and an iron. And I remember she loved being in the front room at our house every time there was a wedding. So she'd come over and see who was coming and get to the wedding and see the gowns, but do that while in the sanctuary of the house so that she wouldn't be seen. So it was at age 12 that Mom started to learn to play the church organ under the guidance of Emma Frost Chapman. And she started first to play for Sunday school and for the later the evening service. She joined many others offering the ministry of music to the church. And we'd like to recognize, of course, Sarah, Neil, Wynn Blackmore, Dorothy Coate, Eileen Bealey. We've got Eileen Finson here, and many more who have supported the church through ministry of music through the years. But none can match Mom's service of over 70 years, stopped only by the loss of vision. I said she should know the hymns by now. I mean, she knew the words, but she was a sight reader for music, so she couldn't play them from memory. In her career, she went through 4 church organs, 4 hymn books, 3 styles of choir gowns, and countless ministers. Now, in later years, I know that both Bob Davies and Peter Simmons relied on her, as you just said, for guidance during the service. I remember being here, and both Bob and Peter saying, well, Emily, what comes next? So they perhaps lost their place in the service.
Many times.
She's given a lifetime of service to the church and the village through the Anglican Church Women, the Sunday School Superintendent, the Women's Institute, the Legion Auxiliary, following the lifetime of service given by her parents. Now, organists were paid a small honorarium by the ACW, but as treasurer of the ACW, my mother seemed to skip writing herself a check. And I recall going to church in the city. I was in university, and I was shocked to learn that the organist was paid. I thought that was terrible. Now, I have about 4 or 5 or 6 hours of stories that I've taped, so I'm going to play them out here. But no, Mom said, no, quote, I'm telling you these stories, but I don't want you telling them at church. She simply says, as Peter's already said, she was put here by God to offer what skills she had to share. So since I'm not allowed to tell any more of these stories, we'll come to the window dedicated here today. Peter is allowing me the sin of pride, as the design of this window has been kept under wraps until now. Do we have confession for that, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you later.
Quiet today.
Okay. And my father said that, so many years ago, in the entrance of the church, we dedicated a window to my father, Frank Wood. We're using the old red and green glass from this church that he had the forethought to preserve when the various picture windows were installed in the 60s and the early 70s. And the design there is simply a flower representing his love of gardening, the father of 3 sons, and of course the Holy Trinity. My father said that cogitation is the most important part of any job. So after 15 years of cogitation, I came up with the concept for this window. And Mom's history with the church and the village is more complex than could be portrayed in simple pieces of glass. So starting with the picture that I took sitting about where Karen and David are, her playing at the organ, that was the concept I had. And I took that to a stained glass studio in Toronto and worked with a great artist from the old country, Andrew, I think he's from Poland, and we worked over a few months back and forth with pictures and images to create the center panel that is in this window. So this is a center panel like the flowers, and the rest of the window with the red and green glass. So with that image of her playing the organ, we added the hymn board with her favorite hymns, which turned out to be from the Blue Book. And these are the hymns we're singing today. The last summer we had a favorite hymn Sunday at Bracebridge United Church. And so we used that as kind of, she didn't know about the window then, we used that as a platform to find out her favorite hymns. So we said, well, what are your favorite hymns? And so, she can't see what I'm doing across from the table, so I'm casually writing them down as she's saying them, and save that list. And then a month later she says, oh, well, you know that list of hymns I gave you? Well, they're not really my favorites. She says that my favorites are not in the current hymn book, they're in the old Blue Book and some other books. So she then gives us another list of about 7 or 8 hymns. So Peter and I worked together and decided to just chose the ones just from the Blue Book, because some were not even in print anymore perhaps, and chose these ones today. And then later on, once on Mom's birthday, we showed her the panel and talked about the service. So it's been a non-ending hell since then of her coordinating what's going on today. And so then she added what hymn she wanted during communion. And of course she tells us she's blind, but she's sitting here, and then I have to go over and tell Sarah that the wrong number is up there. The 733 is Once in a Royal David City, and we shouldn't be playing a Christmas hymn during communion. So I don't know what this not being able to see stuff is all about. So I went over to Sarah and I said, I'm sorry, but the woman in the cheap seats said you're wrong. I'm sorry, Sarah. Thank you for working with us. So the hymns that I've tried to capture her baking heritage. I could have chosen the butter tarts, pies, cookies, muffins, but I settled on dinner rolls, thinking of the 6 dozen dinner rolls each that she and Hazel Presley made for decades for every Rosso community dinner. And for many years,
She said make it 12 dozen.
Well, 6 from you and 6 from Hazel, wasn't it?
No, Paul put me through this.
Oh, okay, see, I got it wrong again. I gotta change this. 12. I'll change that for later for the Algoma. Okay. So for years, Martha would not eat any other rolls at the community dinner unless they were grandma's. So if she got here and the basket in front of us were Hazel's dinner rolls, she wouldn't eat them. Or we would be at some other, perhaps some other church or community or somewhere else, and they weren't grandma's buns. We tried to say, well, there's some other grandma's, but that didn't matter. So in the image that Andrew created is a basket of dinner rolls sitting in front of the organ. In a basket, a linen cloth, with lining the basket with an embroidered cross on the front. The last item, when I got the last image from Andrew, he would add things and send the sketch up to me. And I said, her neck looked kind of bare with the neckline of the fire gown. So I said, can you add, I took a picture, this pink necklace. It was a gift from Ronnie in Kenya. And the Ronnie Fund is a family project of Kathy and I and Martha and Jeremy working to improve village life in Kenya. And Ronnie has sent it over for Grandma, and it's one of her favorites. So it's interesting that the path of Grandpa William Holton walking up to the Old English Cemetery has led our family in the direction of faith through outreach to another small village in Kenya. In fact, today, I got an email from Ronnie a couple days ago and said, Papa, what can we do to recognize Grandma today in Kenya? So Ronnie's mother, Gertrude, is leading a group of ladies in the village, and they're cooking all day, and they're going to invite several orphans who don't have enough to eat over for a big evening meal and fellowship in recognition of the window dedication today. And of all the names in the world, Ronnie's parents are named Gertrude and William, if that rings a bell to you. And Ronnie's grandmother, who passed away last year, is Emily. So, chance or divine intervention, I'll leave that up to you. Now, some say that a church window must have the image of God or Jesus in it. But in today's questioning society of the relevance of church, what better image than a woman who has served God through a lifetime of service to others? God guided her fingers over the keyboard for over 70 years. He woke with her at 4 a.m. in minus 30-degree weather on winter mornings to come to the church to light the coal or wood fire or turn on the thermostats so the church would be warm. Now she tells me that really that was the caretaker's job to do that with my father, but he didn't like to get out of bed. As I mentioned with the Grandpa ringing the bell. Now he's not here to defend himself, so we'll have to take Mom's word for it. And of course, after Pop passed away, there were decades when she was on her own and still doing this before we had programmable thermostats. We had Emily Wood. God needed the bread, so God was walking across the dinner jams. God needed the bread with her for the church dinners, baked the cookies and the muffins for Sunday school children that became the basis of the church lunch that others now prepare. No, I wasn't supposed to tell that story. But the kids were here for Sunday school and the church, and she felt that was a little bit too long, and she bought some cookies, and then it was too expensive to buy them, it was cheaper to make things and muffins, and now that has become the tradition of lunch here at Church of the Redeemer that so many others have taken over. Now today we've moved it to the community hall, where you're all asked to come with us, and the window will go over there to look at it a little more closely. And God gave her the family that cared for her now and continue to carry on her faith through outreach to others. So without further ado, I off this window to the glory of God, the Church of the Redeemer, in recognition of the service to God and God's children by Emily Wood and the Holton family.
Beautiful. Isn't that just absolutely beautiful? There's our Emily right there. And we've eaten many of those rolls, and it's beautiful. Please stay.